Welcome to Everyday Ethics, everyone. We are pleased to have you with us on this President's Day. Well, in the U.S., it's President's Day. Everywhere else in the world, I can't imagine you could give two you-know-whats about it being President's Day. But we're going to have a great talk today. I don't think we're going to be limited to the half hour. If it's a great discussion, we'll go beyond that. Remember, please, we love super chats and super stickers. They are very, very, very helpful. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the lovely Persephone, who, by the way, there's an episode out right now of my podcast, Irrational Egoist, and it is an interview with Persephone. Very good interview. I anticipate having her back on in the future.
It was very fun. So I had a couple of questions. I had a couple of thoughts.
All
It was
right.
very interesting. It was a very interesting weekend. We had our first Patreon group chat this weekend.
Yeah.
For anybody who wasn't there, you missed a good time. One of the things that we spoke about in that group chat was the story I told you about the woman who hi Catherine, the woman who turned her coworker in for using company software um,
Yeah.
to make money on the side.
Sure.
Um, so we were talking about how obviously she was in the right to turn him in because it was against company policy. If if this woman had known that turning him in would result, because of office politics, would have resulted in her having to leave her job, right? Because
Okay.
this is looking like it might happen. Like she might, because everybody at her company now hates her and refuses to, you know, engage politely with her. It's looking like she might have to leave this job to find a better one where
Okay.
people aren't such dicks. Um, if that was the case and she knew that going in, would your do you think that she would still be in the right for turning him in?
Uh, well, yeah, it still wouldn't have been wrong for her to turn the guy in. Whether it would be something I would recommend to her uh, is a different story altogether. I mean, ultimately, you want to work though in an environment where people have a high ethical bar. You don't want to work around scumbags, right? So maybe it's the best to just get out of that place, anyways. I mean, I don't know what the culture is or and whatnot there, but it can't be too great if this is how people there think that the person who steals isn't to be condemned. It's the person who reports the theft that's bad. That is not the type of place that I'd want to work.
Yeah. But it's weird because they don't look at theft from a company as theft. But you know what else is really funny? If a company steals from them, wage theft, right? If a company steals from them, then they can realize that it's theft. But if it's the other way around, if they're stealing from the company, it's almost like they think it's a different thing altogether.
Yeah, well, a lot of human beings are very sensitive to things happening to them, but don't appreciate when it's somebody else. I had a conversation with Danny and another friend of mine the other day. When we were young, Danny and I were, well, Danny's younger than me, but grew up in a project, so there's older kids, younger kids, a lot of kids there. And, I was bullied and I held resentment against my bullies for decades afterwards. What I didn't take into consideration was the people that I bullied, right? I never factored in, well, what about those kids? It was, I was the victim, poor me. These guys were mean to me. And I also didn't consider the people that bullied those that bullied me. It was just, I was bullied. And so that is a tendency people have that we have to make special effort to not fall into. But in this case, it's just so obvious to me that this person that's doing what he's doing is behaving unethically.
Sorry, I was reading Mr. Deagle's comment. Okay. So here's the other thing that I've been thinking about. There was that question, but there was also, I've been thinking about guilt. So if you are working on being a better person or a more ethical person, you, for instance, are working on your anger, we spoke about last week. Can you talk about guilt for like the guilt that occurs when you violate your that value, right? You're working on your anger when you have like an angry outburst. Do you feel guilty?
Yes, but I want to be crystal clear here. One of the things that's recommended for criminals in rehabilitation is to cultivate a sense of guilt. We want to feel badly about ourselves because the problem with criminals is we don't feel guilty enough. So I have cultivated a very strong conscience, and I did so intentionally so that I feel excessively guilty because I want to avoid feeling that way. So that's just one more motivator. Most people, I think, they experience unearned guilt, guilt over things for which they should not feel guilty. And so you have to be very careful there. I think that a healthy sense of guilt can be a motivator to keep you in line, but I think there's a big risk for your average person in beating yourself up, and that ends up being counterproductive because you feel bad about yourself, your self-esteem drops. When your self-esteem drops, you behave poorly. When you behave poorly, you feel guilty, and you don't want to sort of engage that cycle. That's not to say if you do something legitimately wrong, objectively wrong, the thing to do is not sit around beating yourself up about it, but to fix it, to rectify whatever you've done wrong, address the issue within yourself, and make amends if you've hurt somebody else.
Yeah, but it's also like yeah, it's rational guilt versus irrational guilt. And I know something that I struggle with a lot is feeling guilty over stuff that I probably shouldn't feel guilty of. Not when I've wronged someone else, but when I've wronged myself, right?
Well, hold on.
Mm.
Why don't you think that you should? Why would there be guilt if you harmed somebody else, but not if you harmed yourself? Why do you think it would be more appropriate to feel guilt for doing wrong to, say, me than doing wrong to Persephone?
Bad phrasing on my part. Not that I, not
Sounds
that
like an
I,
excuse.
you're an excuse.
Hey,
Not that I shouldn't feel guilty, right? But there's a difference between a rational level of guilt, realizing that I've done something wrong, taking the steps to correct the wrong, and then moving on, right? If I've done what I need to do, I've corrected the thing that I've done, and then I need to be able to move on, right?
yes,
I have a problem with myself where if I do something wrong, again, not to other people, because I do my best not to wrong other people, with myself, if I go against one of my own values, I do have a tendency to beat myself up, like irrationally. Advice?
yeah, don't do it.
Thank you. Would you
I
like to
mean,
go into
well,
more? Would you like to go into some more
I mean,
detail?
but here I will, but ultimately you're recognizing it as irrational, right? This is not a case where you need to learn to recognize something is irrational. If you already know, then it's up to you to start engaging in the self talk immediately when you're feeling this irrational emotion and to say, look, I'm doing my best. I screwed up. I'm rectifying it. I'm moving on. It's about how you talk to yourself, which, by the way, you are largely in control of. So if you know it already that it's irrational, the thing to do is to put in the work, put in the steps that you already know, which is self-talk, act appropriately, rectify the situation, etc., etc.
Okay, so now imagine that I am completely new to this. Imagine that I'm completely new to this, right? I am an absolute baby, and I come to you and I tell you I've done something wrong. I've violated one of my values, and I feel so guilty about it, and I
Okay.
can't get over it.
All
Right?
right.
What do I do?
Okay. So there's a couple of tactics that you can employ, right? You can ask them. You can first ask, well, what is it? What have you done? And ask, is this a rational value? Meaning, is it objective? Is the value in line with your self interest? How extreme do you think that the violation is? How quickly can you remedy it? Is it easily fixable? It, you know, and do you think that the emotion matches it? Is your emotion a disconnected or an exaggerated guilt given what's been done? And one of the things you can do is say, well, if it were me, if it were, how would you be judging it? Would you judge me as harshly as you're judging yourself? So there's just a bunch of questions that you want to go through. But the most important thing to me is to fix whatever the issue is. And once you've done that, once you've remedied it, or you've begun taking steps to do so, or just if it's something that can't be remedied, it's over, and all you can do is vow not to do it again. Once you start working along those lines, then you should tell yourself, look, I'm doing what I can to fix it. I cannot change the past. I can only change what I do now and what I do in the future, and I'm doing that. And just use that self-talk to dial down that guilt. Now, it won't happen immediately, but it will happen. But the key is you have to have a rational set of values. And you have to understand where they are in your hierarchy, and when it is objective to hold yourself accountable or judge yourself negatively or not. Because oftentimes people feel guilty, like, my mother asked me for a ride to the mall, and I feel so bad I didn't do it. Well, why are you obligated to bring your mother to the mall? And especially if you have one of these moms that is trying to guilt trip you, right? Why is she doing that? That's the problem. She's the one that's wrong if she's guilt tripping you in that way.
Yeah, I mean, this that specific example, people do feel like they're obligated to look after their parents. Maybe not in America. I know it's a big thing here in
No,
South
they
Africa.
do. And I'm not even saying that you shouldn't. What I'm
Mm,
saying is that if you simply have something else to do and your mother is relatively, healthy, and she's asking you for a ride and you can't do it, there's no need to feel guilty. Now, if you're just being an asshole to your mother, that's a different story. But
yeah,
your life should not be consumed with doing favors for other people. And nobody has the right to make you feel guilty if you don't. That's what I'm saying.
oh, I have a strange question.
No,
So,
I only like women. I'm sorry.
so just speaking about doing favors for your mother, right?
Yeah.
I have a very close relationship with my mother. I have a very close relationship with my whole family. So I do a lot of favors for my mother and for my sister and I come from a Catholic family, so my family is huge. I do a lot of favors for my family. I choose to live close to my mother, um, because she's older, and if something happens, I want to be close. And something indeed has happened. She fell and she broke her wrist, and we had to drive her to the hospital. Um, my my friend occasionally tries to make me feel guilty for being so accommodating to my mother and to my sister, because she says, well, they're like, yes, you can have a close relationship with your mother, but you shouldn't be so dependent on her, right? You shouldn't be so close to her. You shouldn't make yourself so available.
Um, See, that's kind of like the opposite problem. Now you have a friend that wants to make you feel guilty. This is your life. right? These are your values. You have to cultivate the values that are in your own interest. These might be having a close relationship with your family, assuming that your family are good people and are an actual value to you or a benefit to your life. Now, your friend has no more right to guilt you than your parents. It's up to you to assess this, assess what is right for Persephone. Once you've done that, assuming you're being rational, you're not caving and giving in to some old emotions or whatever, assuming these are logical decisions that you're making, then your friend has no more of a right than your family does to try to guilt trip you that way. So, like, by the way, I should not guilt trip the audience when they're not giving super chats and super stickers.
Can I do it? If
You
you
can
if
guilt them
you
if you
if
want.
you want me to be able to get out of Michael's basement where I'm currently being held hostage,
Don't say that. Jesus Christ. Are you
every,
crazy?
everybody knows that we're not even on the same continent. Um,
Oh my lord! Somebody actually said to me on Twitter in regard to the thumbnail. They said, "Oh, Persephone looks wonderful." I guess they didn't know that's not actually you in the picture.
I mean, I could look like that.
You could, but that's the actual, well, not the actual, because there is no actual Persephone, but that's the Greek character Persephone. uh, from where or from who this Persephone gets her name?
Yes, from Greek mythology,
Yes.
Married to Hades. Um,
I don't know where Lee wants to be. Does she want to be trapped in my basement, or does she want to be in
I
South
think
Africa
that I think
or
I
in
think that's
South
what she's saying.
Africa?
She wants to be trapped in Michael Leibowitz's basement. That's what I think she's saying. Um, so for someone who is maybe a little bit younger, maybe doesn't is just taking their first baby steps into figuring out what their values are, right? And has absorbed sort of the altruist message from their surroundings.
Yeah.
A lot of their what they think are values to them is going to be driven by strong emotion, right? And a lot of that is going to be guilt. How does a person who is newer go about separating what their real values are from what they think their values are, or what they think their values should be?
First, identify a rational standard to judge values by, and be methodical as you're doing it. Really weigh and look, is this actually in my interest? Is this the best for me? And it requires thinking of the entire context in which you live, looking to the future, assessing potential consequences, potential drawbacks, risks, rewards, that sort of thing. And it also helps to learn to think logically. And there's an abundance of books that you could buy. How to Think Straight comes to mind by Anthony Flew, because I happen to have read that one, but I'm sure there's other books out there that can teach the basics of logic, critical thinking, so that you can actually use your mind to identify what is best for you instead of just going by whim, by emotion, by what other people expect of you or what other people demand of you.
Can you give us an example from your own life? Do you have any examples from your own life
What do you mean?
of maybe a value that you thought you had, that when you used logic and you looked at it rationally, you realized that it wasn't a value?
Oh, wow. The problem with using me in these scenarios is my character was so fucked that the stuff was obvious. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, I mean, you know, sniffing heroin and smoking weed in prison are not good values. Robbing people, not good values. Being violent towards other people, not good values. So the big stuff was really easy to identify because it's blatantly obvious. I do sometimes think, like for instance, if you eat pizza in excess, it's not good for you. But at the same time, you need to have pleasure in life, right? So if I just eat, like, do I want to live to 95 eating grass,
No.
where I can never enjoy a meal? Or would 80 be good, but I can enjoy all the good foods I want? But there has to be a balance. And that's, those are by no means obvious. How much pizza is too much pizza? Should I not eat any? Should I eat it once in a while? I tend to think if I'm going out and it's a special occasion, that the laws of nutrition don't apply any longer. Right? So, but that's obviously not true. Friends, when you're dealing with people of mixed character, which most human beings are of mixed character, most people are of mixed character. So, you have to identify the good parts of them and associate with those. Like if you just said, you know what, I am not going to associate with anybody unless they are 100% committed the way I am to ethics, who the hell are you going to talk to? You're going to lose your mind because you're going to have nobody to get feedback from, nobody to discuss things with, nobody to be entertained with. That's the type of thing that where I struggle with, where there's borderline cases where the thing could be of value, but maybe it's not, maybe it's harmful. I have no problem avoiding alcohol, for instance, because I know where that's going to lead. Pizza, that tastes very good, and it's not as bad. Mr. Deagle wants to know what taking heroin feels like, so I'm going to give an answer that an old timer in prison told me one time. He said whenever somebody asks him what heroin is like, he answers that, imagine you could get into a Volkswagen with 20 of your friends and still be comfortable. That's what it feels like. And I thought that was the perfect description.
Can I tell a story that is related?
Well, hold on, but I wanted to say something. You know what's not so good though? The withdrawal. That's not so much fun. So
Can I tell a story about heroin?
you can do whatever you like. You're the co-host. No, there will not be a show tomorrow, by the way. I have to attend to business, so I cannot be there tomorrow.
Thank you, Danny. And then also there's another question from Mr. Deagle. There is a very interesting story about a guy, and this happened probably about 15 years ago. This guy posted on Reddit, and he said, "I'm going to try heroin." And everyone said to him, "This is not a good idea. Don't do it." And
Not a good idea.
he said, "It will be fine. I'm just going to try it once. I just want to know what it's like." And what followed, because he chronicled what happened after this, and he had gone into it thinking, I'm going to try this because I think it's an experience that I want to have. And no matter how much anybody told him, listen, do not do this, it is a fucking stupid idea, he said, no, I'm going to do it because I have a lot of willpower and I will be able to do it once and never do it again. And he became addicted to heroin, and he lost his job and his house. And I think it took him about 10 years to get clean eventually from trying to do heroin once because he thought that he was so clever. And
Uh,
anybody can go and Google that story, by the way.
that is not a clever thing to do. That is not a good thing to do. I would not recommend that for anybody. First of all, it can kill you right away, which nobody, well, I don't know, maybe somebody, I don't want that. But no, just stay the hell away from it. Very, very bad.
Yes, heroin is a bad drug. Mr. Deagle asked, "Is it okay to let your thoughts wander to random, non-important things while doing something that doesn't require mental focus, or should you always control what you're thinking about?"
It depends what it is. I mean, I don't. Sometimes it's good. I don't know. Like when you're saying letting your mind wander, I don't know exactly what you mean. As long I think if you know that's what you're doing, that you just want to relax and let your mind go a little bit, and that can be a opportunity to learn about yourself. Where do your thoughts go to when you're not controlling every thought. I wouldn't recommend it as a regular practice, but once in a while, I don't see the harm in it.
Why?
Why don't I see the harm in it?
Why do you not think that it's good to let your mind wander?
On a regular basis,
Hmm. If you're
ha-
if you're washing the dishes, for
I
instance.
think washing the dishes is like a 3-minute thing, but habits. You don't want to cultivate the habit of not focusing on what you're doing, right? Because you do it once, you do it again, and the next thing this is now your mode of functioning.
Okay. I like to let my mind wander while I'm on the treadmill. I think about all sorts of random things while I'm on the treadmill.
Yeah, I don't really see a problem with that.
Okay. Mr. Deagle, did that answer your question? Also, I would like to know why you asked that question.
Why I asked it?
No, why Mr. Deagle asked it.
Oh,
Daydreaming is dangerous. I'm always curious why people ask the questions they ask because I would like to ask better questions myself. So I would like to know, broadly speaking, what the audience is struggling with. Obviously, because, I'm not them. So I'm trying to come up with good questions. So, broadly speaking, I would like to know what the audience struggles with.
well, the audience doesn't seem to be very forthcoming, Persephone. But meanwhile, we have a show to do.
I know the audience is mean.
What is the blue glow in your glasses?
The blue glow in my glasses have a blue filter to block out blue light from my computer because I spend all day in front of my PC and the blue light can cause headaches and can also disrupt your sleep. So I have a filter in my glasses that sort of helps to filter out the blue light.
Mr. Deagle says I have issues with daydreaming, especially when I am bored, probably because my attention span is not very good. I deliberately will, so that I can learn my thoughts and learn more about myself, will just lay and allow my mind to be flooded with whatever's going to come in. And I allow myself to accept it and experience whatever it might be. And I find that to be very, very helpful. So I don't know if that's because it's deliberate. Maybe it's not daydreaming, but I find it to be very pleasant and very helpful.
Sorry, I'm just thinking about that. How is that different though from letting your mind wander? Is it because of the intentionality? You're intentionally
I think
letting
so. I
thoughts
think
come to
so.
you.
Yeah, I think so.
That's interesting.
I'm an interesting person. What can I tell you?
You are an interesting person. I want to come back to the guilt thing because
All right.
I'm still thinking about it. Does is that difficult that you've had to cultivate a sense of like a deep sense of guilt? As a person who experiences just random bouts of guilt for loads of things, I personally don't enjoy it. Um,
No, who the hell does? What happened there?
I'm just thinking like about this deep sense of
No, no,
guilt.
no, 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 no. The screen. Oh, it's some message for me. Okay, it appeared on the screen.
Good. Um, yeah, so the reason I ask is because if I am feeling extremely guilty, right? If I'm feeling very guilty about something, I do find it hard to sort of focus on other things because I'm so focused on how guilty I feel about stuff. Do you I'm assuming you don't have the same problem. If this is something that you've cultivated in yourself,
No, I have had that. I have been crippled by guilt at times, which is one of the reasons I don't like to experience it. And one time I did something. I'm a control freak, right? And it's something that I work on. I've got one long hair right here that's really aggravating me. But I'm a control freak, right? And especially with friends, not as much now because of what I've been through. But I went through an experience with my friend Carlos in prison where we actually stopped being friends, and the guilt like hurt me for months. I was, couldn't get over it, couldn't work. I mean, it was very difficult to work through, even though I knew that it was excessive. So yes, even when you have an underdeveloped sense, the guilt still can be crippling. It's just to me worth it in order for me to get from where I was to where I am. Because I know, for instance, if I'm out at a bar and I hurt somebody, I know what's coming psychologically for me after that. And I do not want that ever. You know what I mean? So I just, no way. When it comes to criminals or anybody really, I guess, but mostly for criminals, you have internal deterrence and external deterrence. And external deterrents are ultimately never going to be enough. You need to have the internal deterrent. And one of those for me is the guilt that I know would come from doing what I'm not supposed to.
interesting. So it's actually difficult for me to ask you questions about it's difficult for me to ask you questions about guilt because you have had to did you not experience like a lot of guilt
Um,
before you went to prison?
okay, so when I was 14 years old, I was hanging around. I grew up in Weathersfield. Weathersfield's right next to Hartford. Hartford's a city. That's the capital of Connecticut. And when I was 14, started hanging around with Hartford kids. And I wanted to fit in with those kids, so I would do what they wanted to do. And one day we were walking down Franklin Avenue, which is one of the main streets in Hartford. And there was a few kids on the other side of the street, and the kid I was with said, or one of them said, "I don't like that dude. Let's go jump him and take his chain." I wasn't really interested, but I didn't want to say no, so we went and did it. And we beat the kid up very badly. And I went home that night, and I felt horrible, like wicked guilt, wicked sad for what I did. And I didn't like that feeling. And so instead of using it as a deterrent for future bad actions, I pushed it out of my head as much as I could. Now, when you do that, the guilt comes less and less. So I don't know. I'm not going to say I never felt guilty again, but I certainly learned to cut the guilt out of my mind and allow me to do things that most people wouldn't be able to do because of the guilt. So I had to reintroduce the guilt inside me. I had to bring it back up. I had to learn to develop it. And that's what I did. And and yes, sometimes it can be crippling. And that's when you have to use balance and say, okay, this is too much now.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's something that you brought up earlier is how much guilt is appropriate for what you've done.
Yes. Yes.
Mm. Audience, do you not have any questions? Do you have no questions?
I
Is there
don't think
nothing
they
that it
do.
is there nothing that you're struggling with at the moment?
It's interesting because I said we'd go long, and they don't seem to want to do that. That's fine. It's President's Day. Maybe people don't have any questions, but that to me, what you just asked. Oh, okay. Vox Populi 55 says that there's a question, but I don't know why not just ask it. So if he wants to ask or she wants to ask, that's cool.
Um,
But that
I
there, let me just say that criminals in general, there's a criminal thinking pattern that Samanow and Yokelson talk about that's cut off. That we're able to cut off fear, we're able to cut off guilt, and this allows us to be criminals. And I remember, distinctly, this is now 35 years ago, and I remember how bad I felt when I went home. And I remember not wanting to feel that way. And I remember by the time I was 16, there was, that guilt was very much gone in most instances. There were times when I would do something to somebody I cared about out of anger and I would still get guilt, but I could go commit an armed robbery and wouldn't feel guilt about it. Wouldn't care.
I mean, I don't want to harp on about this, but was the
Okay.
difference, was it the difference being that, it was people that you didn't know versus people that you did know?
No, not really, because I've done horrible things to people I knew. I don't, so no, not really. I mean, there were people that I would never cross, I would never do wrong to because I just cared about them. And I don't know how that distinction came to be, but it did. I mean, when you're committing crimes and that's your lifestyle, you're not, it's not a logical thing. It's not like you have, I could hold the door open for people and feel bad and, like see some kid suffering and feel horrible for him. And then in the same day, go do terrible things. It's just the way that it worked out. Not the way that it worked out. It's the type of mind that I built for myself. It's what I developed. But to get to what you really want to know about guilt is that it's imperative that you measure your guilt to the crime or the thing that you've done that's wrong, the wrong that you've committed. In my case, I had committed robberies. I had shot at people. I broke into houses. I jumped people. I did a lot of really bad things. So a ton of guilt was completely deserved in that set of circumstances. Most people aren't doing stuff like that, and they don't deserve the kind of guilt that they end up feeling.
Yeah. I mean, again, come back to earned versus unearned guilt and rational versus irrational guilt. Mr. Deagle says, how did you deal with moral sanction in prison? Did you interact with anybody no matter the crime, or did you ignore some people because of their crimes?
In general, I didn't do that. I hung around with people based on who they were then, not based on what they did to get in there. If I was to do that, I would never talk to anybody. So I mean, what are we going to say? Well, this guy over here murdered one person. This guy murdered three. I'm staying the hell away from that three guy. Like, I mean, there's bad people in prison that have done very bad things. So, I would hang around with who was safe for me to associate with.
I'm going to have a very rambling thought, right?
All right.
I
Okay.
apologize.
That's fine.
See if you can pick the thread of what I'm thinking out of this rambling nonsense that
All right.
I'm about to say.
Okay.
So we've spoken about when you're in a friend group or when you have friends, um, and they don't necessarily share the same values as you, right? You can still be friends with them. You're never going to be friends with someone who shares all the same values as you. You're not going to have a group that shares the same values, all of the same values as you. It's unlikely.
Okay.
Where is the line for
There isn't
you?
one.
For
These
you?
type. Okay,
For
but these. Okay, but there isn't. You asked me to pick out the theme. You're looking for something that I don't know that somebody can put into words. I mean, there's obviously extreme things that a person could do that I would not associate with that person, that I wouldn't want that person in my life. Where the exact moment you go from yes, I'll associate with you to not is like saying, when do you go from being rich to non-rich? I know when I see a rich person, I know when I see a poor person. When does the crossover occur?
so
You know.
There is a specific reason I'm asking this, by the way, and it is because this is
Hold
also
that
some.
thought. Talk to the audience. Advertise the show. I'll be back in like 15 seconds.
Hello, audience. Thank you, Vox Populi, for your question, which we will answer when Michael gets back. Also, thank you, Danny, for that 99 cents. Also, please change your profile picture back because the new one is throwing me off. I'm gonna be real honest with you. Um, I didn't actually read Vox Populi's question. I've just now read it.
Yeah. Danny gave us 99 cents, and that's
Which I,
awesome.
I
Thank you,
which I
Danny.
did I did thank him for, and I did tell him to change his profile picture back to the one that it was because the new one's throwing me off.
Let me answer this for Vox Populi. Capital owners, qua capital owners, the people that are savers, the people that are the investors, are heroes, and they have nothing for which to feel guilty. So there is my answer for you, sir. They're not doing harm. They are performing a service to the world that they are often unjustly condemned for and not properly rewarded for. And this is not the show to get into an argument. That's not what we do here, Vox Populi. But if you're interested in debating the subject, reach out to me and I'd be happy to. Thank you, Katrin.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. And also, yes, Danny. Now I do know that it is you. Um. Anyway,
So,
so the
Vox Populi, I'm going to be polite to you this time. I've given you my answer. If you want to have a debate about socialism versus capitalism, I'm happy to. This is not the show for that. Okay, go ahead, Persephone.
the reason I asked that question or had this rambling thought, right,
Mm-hmm.
is because it is a tendency amongst, we've spoken about this before. It is a tendency amongst some younger people, some sort of younger, more left-leaning people, that if their friends have a value that they disagree with, they cut that person out of their life, even if that person brings a lot of value to their life in other ways. And it's very black and white for them, you know?
Yeah, well, the problem is you're talking about, from my experience, or from what I'm gathering, is people who don't have an objective code of values, anyways. So, given that their values are adopted based on emotion, it doesn't surprise me that then they would behave emotionally in the enforcement of those values or in the protection of those values. So, it's often a difference of belief. There's an argument. It's not a clear cut situation, and they think it is. I'll never forget this. Is another thing I'll never forget as long as I live. I had one of my closest friends when I was a teenager was Miguel Garcia. He was older than I was, and he and I would joke, and we'd make, quite frankly, ethnic jokes with one another. And I was over a girl's house. There was a bunch of girls there, and Miguel called, and I made a comment to him about that. And the girl got mad, and I said, "No, no, no, no. This is one of my closest friends." And she didn't take that as a good excuse. She wanted to be indignant about this. Mind you, he wasn't indignant about it. He was my friend. If there came an argument between this girl and me, it was my side he was taking. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, what you're talking about is people want to embrace political correctness as if it's the virtue of all virtues. And anytime someone steps over a line, they're banished, or you end up with cancel culture. Now, I want to just flip that. There's also the tendency for the people who claim to be opposed to political correctness who use their opposition as an excuse for cruelty. And that I don't think is right either.
Can you give me an example?
God. Sure. The people who over everything, they want to tell you, "Oh, you're retarded." You know what I mean? Like, they just, like, you're just being a dick. at this point. You know what I mean? Like they want to use language like that to be edgy or or gay. Now, I'm not the person who thinks like if someone says, "Yeah, that's gay," like I don't care. That's not going to drive me up a wall. But there's people that like to use that language deliberately because they want to protest or they just want to be dicks. And I think that's just secondhandedness the same way the other is. You're just allowing other people to dictate your language, just you're rebelling against them rather than falling in line with them.
Yeah, so I didn't have a problem with using gay as, you know, verbal spice. If I am talking to someone and I say that and they say to me, "Oh, you know, I don't like it when you use those kinds of words," and they're respectful about it, I won't do it. Um, if someone attacks me and says, "Oh, you're so homophobic," oh, rah, rah.
Yeah. I generally don't talk like that because I'm almost 50. I'm not in high school. I mean, so I think that most of the, I mean, it's just very, very immature. Like to be in your 40s on the internet calling people gay and retarded, it's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Especially when the people doing it, if they were, I don't want to go there. Never mind. It's cowardly. It's
I mean,
cowardly.
we could do a whole show about the cowardly behaviors that people engage in on social media.
Yeah,
You
I
know, I
mean, go ahead.
no no you first,
I was
and then
just gonna
I'll.
say I don't, necessarily have an issue if someone says, "Oh, that's retarded." I don't really care. Like that's not. But when people deliberately like use that because they're in protest or they feel they have to talk like that, I just think you're pathetic and you're
Yeah,
not
but
tough. Like you're out there pretending to be tough. I mean, you're not. And I know because it's like Mike Tyson says he loved the tough guys in prison because they were tough until they weren't. And I've seen that 1,000 times. And it's just like, just stop. Just be a good human being. Like, why do you have to pretend to be tough on the internet? Like, it's so pathetic.
this, what drives me insane about that is that almost no one thinks that those people are tough. So I don't understand who they think that they're being tough for. Is it
I
just
don't
is it
know.
for is it just for themselves?
I
Or is
don't
it
know. I really wish I could answer that. I do not know the answer.
I don't think you do wish that you could answer that. I think that you don't really. Why would you want to answer that? Um, I don't really have any more questions.
All right. Well, it's a good a time to any then to wrap up. Remember, folks, I will not be here tomorrow, but Wednesday we will be back. And guess what it is Wednesday?
Cat ear day?
Yes, but it is also our 50th episode.
Everybody go to the YouTube comments and let us know what we should do to celebrate the 50th episode.
Yes. Do that in the YouTube comments. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Persephone. Remember to go check out Persephone's interview on the Rational Egoist. And remember to join us. We love you coming to the show. We love your questions. Vox Populi, thank you for being respectful once I asked you to be. Really, really appreciate that. Please come back. We will see you on Wednesday. Until then, be ethical.